Yeah, well, Cabin in the Woods, it was kind of like a new take for Joss Whedon. I mean, obviously he'd done Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he'd he's done the Avengers, he's directed that one, so I pretty much assumed that you would enjoy going to see Cabin in the Woods, which is what I recommend.
I pretty much assumed that I would enjoy Cabin in the Woods as well. I mean, look, I'm a mad Joss Whedon fan. I mean, Buffy, Angel, Serenity, forget about it. Joss Whedon is king. But Cabin in the Woods was a serious misstep. I was so disappointed. It was one of those movies that I actually went to the pictures of recent, because I actually sit at home and watch movies on my laptop in my underwear. But for Cabin in the Woods, I actually said, I gotta go, hon. I gotta go. I gotta see Joss Whedon's new movie. I love Chris Hemsworth, and I just wanted to see a horror movie. They said this was bringing the horror movie back, and actually it set the horror movie back a couple of years.
Maybe it's the marketing side of things, because obviously with things like Fight Club, when that was released, it was targeted at a completely wrong audience, so it brought in people expecting one thing, gave them another. As I didn't read into too much what the film was going to be about, it was much more about going to see it because, well, I work at the Odeon, so I get all of the movies for free.
Yeah, he works at the Odeon, so movies for free. But let me tell you something there, Craig. I mean, first of all, if we look at the marketing campaign of Cabin in the Woods, fantastic. I mean, to make that haunted house look like a Rubik's Cube, I was sold. Yeah? To say that this was going to be the best, the remake, the coming back of horror, I was sold. But then when I went in, and the first shot, or the first sequence with the two guys in the suits, and then it stopped into the freeze frame, I was sold, because it had that 70s look, down to the red type of the letters. It looked like Mother's Day. It looked like, okay, something's really crazy going to happen here. And I waited, and and I'm still waiting.
Okay, so it wasn't as climactic as you thought that would be, but the thing is
I know climax.
The premise of it, I reckon, was good, and it's more of a homage to kind of the classic films, as in like things like Psycho. You can see a lot of that.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
the kids alone in the forest. There's no way back out, and there's all these things.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about it now because it's after the film. I mean, it was supposed to be the fact that they take every last bit of the horror genre and flip it on its head by having these people in control of it. Now, maybe on script, on paper, it looked clever. On film, it looked, no.
Because the payoff shot for me was when they suddenly go down into the basement and you see all these creatures and things. Like, you found that to be the worst part?
See, this is why you're as a young man, where you grew up in the digital CG generation, where horror film was completely destroyed. I mean, I go back to the remake of Haunted House on Haunted Hill. Did you ever see that one?
I haven't
with
seen
Tate
that one
Diggs?
yet. No.
Now, this will happen. Craig has never seen anything. So, I say it for the audience, for those who have. House on Haunted Hill with Tate Diggs. This was one of the first horror films that destroyed the whole genre, where they started to bring in CG menaces.
Yes, yeah.
And what happened is that now we grew up where we can actually see the stalker, Michael Myers, Jason, Freddy Krueger. But here we have a totally invented creature on green screen, in House on Haunted Hill. Now, the original with Vincent Price, of course he never saw it, the original Vincent Price had this really horrific scene where they're in the dark. People surrounded, they're holding candles. And they're surrounded in the dark, and they're moving throughout the house. And all of a sudden, the camera pans over, and the old lady's like, like that. I freaked. I freaked. Okay, now watch. No. I bet you, Craig, if you turn your head and then you turn around. Go ahead, do it. Turn your head, turn to me.
So if I go this way, yeah.
Yeah, and then you turn to me. You see, look at how you freaked. Yeah. That did not happen in Cabin in the Woods.
Okay. Maybe in terms of shock value, Cabin in the Woods was much more about the gore factor and the fact that it was much more along the lines of you actually saw more blood and guts than you should have.
Torture porn, gore porn, J porn, it was all kind of porn in that movie except for naked girls. I mean, really, well, one chest shot. But, no, it was disappointing. But let's get to something good, eh? I mean, now, the reason why we're talking about Cabin in the Woods is because Joss Whedon just did finally reinvent himself, made his huge comeback with the Avengers.
Yes, of course. Obviously, that was a 5-year endeavor. They introduced Iron Man, they introduced the Hulk. twice
Captain
actually.
America. Well,
Captain
yeah,
America.
twice.
Yeah, like the amount of people who played the Hulk has just been like absolutely ludicrous because it's been difficult to keep a single track on how the character.
Yeah, all they needed was one computer. But I mean, like what I thought was fascinating. I mean, because you said you heard it. Zach Penn talked about the creation of the Hulk, and he actually wrote both scripts. And he said that the second Hulk, the one with Ed Norton, which was the best. He said that that was actually the first Hulk script he wrote. And, you know, then when Ang Lee came in, the guy who made Crouching Tiger, right, you know, thought, oh, no, this had to be about a father and son, and the father had to implement the horror into his child. Now, look, I love Bruce Banner and Hulk. I love Peter David's version where that was brought up, where it was all about being an abusive child, and the Hulk was his subconscious made real.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I give it to Ang Lee for sticking to the comics. But, you know, Zach Penn said, hey, look, you know, when we came back, we rebooted the Hulk, and it went back to my script, and the script that I wrote 10 years ago, I rewrote, and here we are with this great fascination. I'm actually kind of disappointed that Ed Norton didn't actually do the Avengers. Are you?
I am actually, yeah, because, well, at the same time, Mark Ruffalo did bring something new to the script. I mean, his kind of portrayal of Bruce Banner kind of represents a different side to him than what we'd seen with Ed Norton, because I think Ed Norton was a lot more neurotic than Mark Ruffalo. He seemed a bit more calm and contented kind of thing. So, and besides, the Mark Ruffalo Hulk looks a lot more like the comic version of the Hulk, I reckon.
That is true.
Like, it looks a lot more...
Hulk smash! Alright, turn your head again. Okay. And come back. No, when he did that to the Thor, it was great. I just thought it was excellent. Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, the Avengers. I mean, now let's get to the Avengers. I mean, great movie. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about action all throughout. Usually, what happens in comic book movies, there's only one big set piece, isn't there? I mean, there's the boring origin story, and it's boring only because if you read the comics, we're talking about 30, 40 years of history that is retread over and over again, and all you really want to do is get right to the action. And so they felt with the initial 3 films that you mentioned, they already could just jump right into the action, which they did. I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, a very small scene where Iron Man was underwater, you know, like, you know, setting up some pipe for his pipeline for his, you know, tower to
Stark Tower, yeah.
Fantastic, because it was very much a comic book shot.
It was, yeah, like, you just got that from, like, the early Marvel comics things. Like, you could just see that it was, and the way in which he flies up and then the span of the city and everything, it was just taken almost, like, scene for scene from a comic book. Or,
yeah. I mean, you know, are you disappointed, as I'm disappointed, that they never actually said Avengers Assemble?
I am actually slightly disappointed. I mean, the thing is that with the Avengers
Maybe we should say, spoiler alert, but too late.
Just the whole title of Marvel Avengers Assemble, that's the full title that was...
Well, wait a minute. Do you know why they did that?
It's so that it wasn't confusing with the TV series of the 60s or something like that, wasn't it?
Like you would. Yeah. I mean, seriously. Like you would confuse the Avengers with Patrick Steed and Emma Peel. Let's see, people be confused. So they call it Avengers Assemble in the UK, but not in America. It is called the Avengers in America. But that was the highlight of each time the old order changes in the comics, was that Captain America would shout Avengers Assemble. You know, you actually get, you know, the guys like Hawkeye or somebody will say, right, is he going to say it? Is he going to say it? The Avengers standing out on their front doorstep, you know, to announce to the public, you know, on the press, you know, that the Avengers assemble. And, you know, when they did that big circle up, you know, you thought maybe in there...
Oh, yeah, that's where it was coming on, like...
you would think that he would have said, okay, Avengers assemble, you know, or, okay, fine, then they didn't do it. But then when they had all of those different news feeds, I thought that they would have probably, you know, at least have somebody, you know, some dumb kid say, Avengers assemble. But no, that was the only disappointment I had with that movie.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, the actual character, Captain America, he's kind of like the... He has very little to do in the movie, kind of thing. Like, his superhero is very much laid back. Like, he's only, like, tied into, like, commanding people where to go. But obviously that's the character. But the best part for him was where he stood on top of the taxi and then he's yelling at the police car. Get those people out of the building, do this, do this. And he goes, why should we listen to you? And then suddenly...
And then he just kicks a major butt and then they say, okay, let's go on. No, that is right. But, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because... that's where we get to Chris Evans as a choice.
Yeah.
I mean,
he was also in Fantastic Four.
As the Human Torch, and he was also in The Losers.
Oh, yeah.
Which is another comic book story which nobody ever saw.
Including
and he was also in Push, which is kind of like another version of Side Force. So Chris Evans loves his comics, and he was in Scott Pilgrim. So Chris Evans loves his comics. But as Captain America, I understand that Captain America is supposed to be a guy who was out of his time. But he still felt like a man, you know, that was commanding a whole unit. But Chris Evans looked like he was like, you know, some surfer dude, you know, on a party scheme. You know, so every time you see him, he was a little too laid back, I think. You're right about that. And he didn't really command too much for me. I mean, especially in a room full of, like, you know, what Thor and Iron Man. And
definitely. I mean, I think Tony Stark just kind of made him into the straight man the whole way through, because that was the kind of ploy.
Well, but that was good. Yeah. That was good. Their interaction was good, but it just he doesn't feel like Captain America to me. I don't know if they're gonna get to Captain America too. I think that's in question.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious point forward for the matter of the Avengers, is that's what's going to be, is the sequels to the original Iron Man series, the Incredible Hulk, Captain America, and then looking to bring in people like Spider-Man and X-Men and all those types of people for the Avengers too. Obviously that was hinted at the end of the movie with...
well, do you know who the bad guy was?
I can't remember his name, that's the problem.
Alright, here we go, people. This is just for you. The bad guy in the end of the movie, where everybody else had a hero-gasm, was Thanos. Thanos, the mad deviant titan who was in love with death, who actually created the 6 soul gems to create the Infinity Glove. So it was a big, powerful Marvel crossover series called the Infinity Gauntlet. And so it was fantastic to see Thanos at the end, just the same as it was fantastic to see Sinestro in his black and gold at the end of Green Lantern, even though horrible movie that.
Oh yeah, well, the thing with Green Lantern is that they had so much comic material to draw from. It was just like they had to take so much, and it was much more of a geekdom than anything else, than an introduction for other people. Like, it just felt like they'd taken the mythology, but they hadn't really laid it out for people to understand. It just jumped straight in to these alien races and these CGI effects, and it's just like
it was very full on CGI. But I mean, like, it needed to do that in a way. But Green Lantern has gone through so many changes, you know, with Brightest Day and all of that other kind of stuff, that they're wondering, well, what should we show? You know, should we make this about a space cop? Now, I thought that was good when I read that's what we should do, make this about a space cop. But he actually never did any policing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he actually created a lawnmower at one point, I think. You know, and then again, what did he have? A big CGI villain. Now, I thought they were going to go, all right, cool, they're going to have Hector Hammond, you know, with the guy with the big head, you know, and he was going to fight him. But no, we get a big CGI, you know, kind of like blob.
Yeah,
you know, they're going to take over the city.
Like a blob.
And then all of these alien races that you created, this Green Lantern Corps, they never even come. They say, I'm not going to help him. You know, and it's like, you know, and if they did, I forgot. That's how bad the movie was. It was forgettable.
I couldn't see.
You know what I mean? So it was just kind of like they had too much material coming in, because Green Lantern was going through so much change when they were making the movie that they didn't know what to do. Just like his girlfriend, who becomes Star Sapphire. You know, she doesn't in this movie, but then they're as if they're trying to set that up. They don't know what to do, you know, because they got all the colored rings and everything, and you know, it was just kind of like difficult. I mean, but I thought they should just stuck with the original, you know, Green Lantern story, that reboot where it was all about him drink driving, and you know, he gets the ring, and you know, and Sinestro trains him, you know, to be the space cop, you know, and but to throw in that whole big blob and Hector Hammond and all that, it just didn't work for me.
I mean, ultimately, I think that movie could have been told within the first 10 minutes of that movie. Like, I reckon that where he defeats that big blob thing, you could have easily have done that and moved on to the space.
There was no. Do you understand what I mean? There was no like crisis. There was no can I win.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I mean, even when he had to face Parallax, you know, there was no can I win. I mean, this is a creature made of yellow, and my green ring doesn't work against yellow. Can I win? There was none of that.
It's almost like the scriptwriter went through like a checkbox by the producers. Just went, yep, he transforms into a superhero. Yep. Oh, there's a funny scene where where his powers just don't work, and he has to charge up his